Perfect is a word I very rarely use to describe anything. What perfection means will differ from person to person, but to me, perfection isn't a quantity. Perfection isn't about having zero flaws or being the objectively best, if there is such thing as an objectively best. Perfection isn't something I can quantify. To me, perfection is an experience. Perfection is when a game just feels right, and when little annoyances here and there just instantly melt away to leave me in a state of mind that can never be truly recreated by anything else. With that in mind, the day stages of Sonic Unleashed for the Nintendo Wii, in my opinion, are perfect. And just the Wii version, mind you. In my opinion, the 7th gen day stages are a much more mixed experience. So now that I've pissed off all 10 people that actually watch my videos, it's time for me to try and fail to articulate my feelings because I can't English. So, I gravitate towards speedrunning when I play Sonic games. That's generally when I enjoy them the most, and that's where the gameplay is deepest for me. Keep that context in mind, it will be important. As I detailed in my Sonic and the Secret Rings review, the key to a good Sonic game is, more than anything else, a happy marriage between movement and level design. To say that Unleashed hits this out of the park would be an understatement. Rather, Unleashed knocks it out of the Earth-Moon system. The levels often get described as empty corridors, which isn't wrong per se, but it is an oversimplification. The only levels I'd honestly describe as such are the stages in Windmill Isle, but they're also the first stages you play in the game, so it makes sense for them to be more spacious and give the player more leniency with the controls. As you progress through the game, the margin for error slims and the skill cap increases, as well as the stages generally becoming denser with more hazards to avoid. The levels themselves are designed around the philosophy of more challenging gameplay being rewarded with a faster clear time, in both intentional and unintentional ways. For example, in Eggman Land, the easiest way through the side-scrolling section is on the lower levels, with these rings taking you up to a grind rail which loops around and, whilst flashy and safe, takes an eternity. Alternatively, home into a string of enemies at the top of the Ferris wheel and you get taken onto the faster high route, which will, unsurprisingly, net you a better clear time. That's the intentional part. The unintentional part is when, on the high route, jumping early lets you skip a good 2 to 3 seconds of the level by homing into a chain of enemies earlier than intended. Every single day stage in Unleashed is built on this kind of philosophy. The levels are designed supremely well around speedrunning, and finding ways of tightening up your run, planned or otherwise, is an incredibly satisfying and rewarding experience. Adding to the experience are the equally masterful controls, which integrate perfectly into the levels. The main thing that sets Sonic Unleashed apart from other boost games is that boosting isn't a continuous gauge, but rather a series of discrete uses that need to be recharged by collecting rings and defeating enemies. It was no doubt designed this way because with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck control scheme, boosting is mapped to shaking the Wii Remote, and good luck continuously doing that for 3 minutes straight in each and every stage. This change, however, has two major knock-on effects on how the game plays when compared to the other boost games. Number 1, you have to think carefully about when you boost. Boosting makes Sonic run at full speed for about 2 seconds, and if you can't control that speed, if you don't clear those sharp turns, if you succumb to the darkness of the bottomless pits, you'll die. And dying is inefficient. But if you do have what it takes, you'll shave those precious seconds off of your clear time. This is the game's way of rewarding you for mastering the controls. Now, you could argue that in any boost game, boosting will make Sonic harder to control, and you'd be right. The difference here is that you can't stop and start at will. When you hit the boost button, you have to commit, come what may. Number 2 is boost management. You need to have a full charge before you can boost, so if you're not thinking about where that charge is coming from, you can find yourself in long stretches without any boost. For example, in Holoska there's this stretch from the outside of the caves to the inside, where there are relatively few rings for building charge. If you boost too much and don't collect enough of the few rings that there are, you'll find yourself without any charge right before this agonizingly long sliding section. But if you do collect more of the rings or be a bit more conservative with your boosts when needed, you can boost just before the slide and shave seconds off your clear time. Beyond these two factors, there are quite a few little things that I love about the controls. Things like how stomping carries your forward velocity, which keeps the flow of a level going. How jumping into enemies gives you a height boost and lets you speed through several homing chains. How tapping the boost button just after the go appears gives you a free charge of boost. Little things like these add depth of mastery far greater than the sum of their parts, and it's why this game is so damn satisfying and fun to speedrun, in my opinion. Notice that, like I mentioned before, I'm focusing on the speedrunning experience. Unleashed's day stages are built for speedrunning, and I believe that they are the best levels for pure speedrunning in the entire Sonic franchise. No other Sonic game, hell no other game I've played, has such a perfect confluence of controls, level design, and game feel for the purposes of speedrunning. Not to say that other Sonic games aren't better than Unleashed in other regards. Colors has 2D platforming if that's what you prefer, Score Attacks in Project 06 has its own satisfying depth of mastery, but in regards to pure speedrunning, which is what I enjoy most out of any Sonic playstyle, Unleashed is the best of them all, in my opinion. Another thing I appreciate about the day stages is that despite their depth of mastery, they don't compromise in accessibility. For the casual player who just wants to make it to the final boss and call it a day, the levels never demand more than what's reasonable with the controls and camera, but they're never insultingly easy either. Speaking of the camera, that's another boon for these stages. When in 3D, the camera gives a good amount of visibility, and the subtle widening of the field of view as Sonic speeds up is a lovely touch that adds to the sense of speed. Compare this to something like Sonic Colors, which doesn't employ these same tricks, and the sense of speed is comparatively lacking. In 2D, the camera is always dynamic enough to where you have a fair amount of reaction time to upcoming hazards when needed, but it still makes the more automated sections a speedy thrill ride. Some of you might roll your eyes at that latter part, but I think Unleashed implements the automated set pieces better than most Sonic games. They never feel as forced as in Colors or Forces. For the casual player, they provide the usual speedy thrills, whilst for the experienced speedrunner they provide brief but welcome moments of downtime to catch your breath. As a side note, Unleashed has attention to details that I really appreciate. Things like having Sonic stumble about when you try to boost whilst the gauge is empty, having dedicated scraping animations when brushing up against a wall, or tapping the boost button too late causing him to fall over. But by far my favourite detail is the fact that there are 3 different tiers of animations for when you bump into walls head on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, this is something that no other Sonic game has ever done. The fact that these beautiful little flourishes are not only in the game, but that this version of Unleashed was developed by Dimps and the B-Team, never fails to boggle my mind. So yeah, that's why I love the day stages in Unleashed. They combine the best of both worlds, being both accessible to newcomers and maintaining depth of mastery for obsessive weirdos like myself, all bound together in a package of care and love and attention that you just don't see in Sonic games anymore. It's one of my favourite games of all time, and I shan't be tiring of it anytime soon.